Colorado is the opponent on Saturday, and they're the most talked about college football team in this great nation. Is it because they're an elite football program? No, it's not. It is mainly because of their head coach, Deion Sanders. But don't call him that. Don't call him that. Coach Prime is how he must be addressed. And his son, the star quarterback of the Buffs, Shedeur Sanders. And they've also got a guy who's going to be a top 5 pick in the NFL draft in Travis Hunter. They have got a lot of personalities over there, but do they have the character to go along with those characters? It's oft maligned, this Colorado football culture and the turnover that they have between coaches and players from year to year, what the priorities are in that program, what the priorities are for their head coach. Is it CU Buffs football or is it Shedeur Sanders' career? That comes up all the time. Now, both these teams this weekend are in something of a crisis. Okay. One, Baylor, was 3-9 last year. The other, Colorado, started 3-0 and finished 4-8 for the season. One coach is probably on the hot seat in Dave Aranda. The other might not be that far away because how long is the leash for Deion Sanders after Shedeur is drafted in the NFL? Who knows? But both are coming off bad years. One comes in with a ton of expectations. That would be Colorado for this year. And they both have somewhat difficult schedules to get to a bowl eligibility. Both are going through something of culture wars here very differently. You know, Colorado, the culture is it the right culture? Is it one where players are put in a position to succeed? And is it one where the coach is giving it his all for the program and not for just his son and the NIL and the Rolls Royces and all the flash that comes with this Colorado football program right now? The other is asking, hey, can we get some flash? Can we get some flash here? Or some more substance, because it's been pretty vanilla at Baylor the last few years, and they haven't won very many games either. So you take two teams in the last 2 years who are on very different planes of the way they present themselves to the world, but neither one of them is winning football games at a good enough clip anyway. So which culture would you rather have? Would you rather have the demure of Dave Aranda and this Baylor football program that seems to be working its way back, at least on the recruiting trail and the young guys they've got on the field right now? Or would you rather have the pomp and circumstance, the flash and pizzazz, the Hollywood of Boulder, Colorado, which it seems to have right now, where you're going to sell out every game, you're going to play on national TV. Most games, you're going to have the two best skill position players on the field, but there's no guarantee at all you're going to win said game or you're going to play in a bowl game, let alone something like the college football playoff, which a team that gets that kind of attention should be aspiring to. It's a good question in my mind. Which one would you rather have? And a lot of this talk obviously revolves around Deion Sanders, but also his son Shedeur. And in a way, I feel bad for Shedeur. It's not an easy position that he's in. There's two different ways to look at this, and I don't think he's in an easy position. He's Deion Sanders' son. You could argue that Deion is using him or using Colorado as a way to prop up Shedeur rather than trying to make the Buffs great again. And through all of this, Shedeur actually is a damn fine quarterback. He really is. And he's not a schoolyard kind of quarterback the way you might expect with his athleticism and the way he can really uncork that ball. Man, he is an accurate passer who makes really good decisions and had the deck stacked against him last year with the offensive line that he had, and probably again this year. I don't think it's gotten all that much better. And Shedeur seems like a good enough kid. Like he's got a good head on his shoulders for someone who's in that position. But then I hear the Colorado media taking it a bit too far in that sense. Good quarterback, and certainly one that is one of the most talented in the league. And he's not out there, making trouble necessarily. It's not like the old days of Colorado football when they'd bring the media guide in for a police lineup to identify these suspects. It's not like that. But I see Jake Schwanitz. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Jake. Jake Schwanitz after the game against Colorado State, a 28-9 Colorado victory, with Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter in there for their post-game media availability, and they invited the whole offensive line to stand up there behind them. And it says Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter, and the entire offensive line. Leadership. Send tweet. Talk about leadership. Let's talk about leadership. Because the week before, Shedeur threw his team under the bus. Remember? Talking about that pick six. Well, how many times did Raiola get touched tonight? That's not a very nice thing to say about your offensive line. He threw his receiver under the bus in there too. That's not very nice. And a couple minutes before this great leadership moment, Shedeur refused to shake hands with the other quarterback, the one from Colorado State. Now, honestly, guys, I don't really care that he didn't shake hands with the other kid. That kid was running his mouth all week, and Shedeur decided to not shake hands with him. That's okay. There's room for that in sports. There's room for a little bit of bad blood animosity, but don't then 20 minutes later with this PR prop of the offensive lineman behind him say, "Boy, that's leadership right there." Is that leadership? Or is Deion Sanders the leadership we're looking at? The guy who in that same game was throwing downfield with a 19-point lead and under a minute left. Take away the fact that it's probably, in poor taste and running up the score, but would I want my kid or my favorite player being out there potentially taking a hit and risking injury when the game is over? Is that leadership? The guy who won't even let you call him by his first name, that he needs to be addressed as Coach Prime, is that the leadership we're talking about? Or is it the one who is telling some 20-something local news reporter who's probably making less than $40,000 a year that I cannot answer your question and I can't let you do your job because someone from CBS National whom you've never met wrote some things that were very nice about Coach Prime? Is that leadership? I think it's fair to question the leadership in this program because every week there are stories about this program that are not all that flattering. And I also understand this. Deion Sanders is very much a public figure, right? And one that program probably gets more bad press than it deserves. But with stuff coming out every week, at some point, if there's smoke, there's fire. And my good friend Drake Toll from Locked On Big 12 was saying yesterday on a podcast, which name I can't remember right now, saying Travis Hunter, good kid, rocky culture. And he's getting just lambasted for that on Twitter. I don't see anything wrong with his statement. There's questions about that culture there. There's questions when, your main man to the head coach is Warren Sapp, who was one of the most disliked players in the history of the NFL by opponents and his teammates. I said this about Travis Hunter, man. I almost feel bad in a sense because he is a super talented player and seems like a good kid. His role models right now that he's learning from are Deion Sanders and Warren Sapp. Ooh, I don't know about that. Maybe he needs some better people in his corner in terms of how to handle the fame and the fortune and the way your teammates respect you. Because those guys, they had enemies everywhere, every locker room they were in. And so I do think that's unfair to come at Drake for saying that. And there's now questions about this culture from NFL executives. A couple of good stories recently. One of them in the New York Times, talking to two unnamed NFL GMs who have drafted quarterbacks in the top 5 of the draft. And they said, we've seen some great quarterbacks over the years who are unbelievably talented, but they just can't pull it off. There are many, many like that. And at this point, if I'm coming back to the league and kicking off a new regime with what I know, I would never have Shedeur kick things off with me. I'm trying to pinpoint why that is, and I just don't trust everything I'm seeing right now. He's got some money from the portal, and he's spending it the way he is. I just don't trust his maturity. I don't trust how he's going to be able to handle the limelight, which sounds odd because he should be able to handle it more than anyone because he's had it all his life. But is he going to be a distraction in that building? Is he going to irritate people? Do his teammates like him or do they resent him? Now, that might be a little too far, but you've got to wonder, with someone who has been through this all, like Deion Sanders has, a Pro Football Hall of Famer, why execs are still having questions like this. Another one said, during the draft process, everyone pokes holes. Yes, people are going to look at different stuff, but I view it differently. Those types of things are all learned, maturing traits. We forget that kids are going to be kids. So what you look for is how quickly they will grow up. And obviously he's grown up in an athletic environment, but he goes on to say, like, there are certain things that quarterbacks do. Jaden Daniels having the receivers out at 5:30 in the morning for meetings. Matt Ryan used to take his offensive linemen to dinner once a week. Those things are learned. So he's saying there's no reason that Shedeur Sanders can't learn that. But some other things that, are a little worrisome if you're worrying about the Colorado football culture is, and for Shedeur Sanders in the next step, Deion has been his only coach. He's followed Deion. He didn't play major Texas high school football, even though he grew up in the Metroplex with some of the best high school football programs in the world, because he wanted to play for his dad at a Catholic school. And then same thing with, he's going to go to FAU, then he goes to Jackson State because that's where his dad is. And then he goes to Colorado because that's where his dad is. So you got to worry about that, because you got to worry about the way his dad is handling this. He's already gone on and said, for his son, specifically Shedeur, by the way, that he's not going to play anywhere cold. If any cold weather team has the top pick or wants to take Shedeur, not going to happen. He grew up in Texas, played in Jackson, played in Colorado. Season's over before it gets cold there. I'm just thinking way ahead. He also said on the $1 Million Worth of Game podcast, I know he said about his son Shedeur, Shiloh, and Travis Hunter, I know where I want them to go. So there's certain cities that ain't going to happen. It's going to be an Eli Manning. We ain't doing it. Is that the culture that you want? Where you're going to have all these national TV games, but everyone's going to see you fall flat on your face? Is that what you want? I know it's not going to be determined by this game Saturday, but I find it a very interesting debate. Neither team won games last year. So would you rather have one that looks like it is building from the ground up, not a certainty, but looks like it's doing that? Or do you want this guy who's more worried about where his sons are going to play in the NFL next year, whether that city is going to be warm enough for them to play in, and just wants to have his buddies on the coaching staff that were some of the most disliked players in the NFL? I don't know. I guess the choice is yours. Hey, thanks for making it to the end of the video. We really appreciate that. And if you want to keep up to date on all the Baylor sports news, be sure to give us a like and ring the notification bell, because we are your first listen today and every day. We are your exclusive home for nothing but Baylor sports content 5 days a week that's not coming straight from the university. Be sure to follow us here on YouTube and also wherever you get your podcasts, and on Twitter as well at Locked On Baylor. Thanks so much again. Have a good one, and sick 'em.